What makes Studio Ghibli films so magical? Many believe it's the music of Joe Hisaishi. From the floating waltz in Howl's Moving Castle to the melancholic train ride in Spirited Away, the music in Ghibli films elevates the emotion and storytelling in a way that other animation studios can't replicate. Studio Ghibli director Hayao Miyazaki has said many times before that Hisaishi's music is a big reason for his film's success. Have you ever heard a Hisaishi song that wasn't from a Ghibli film? I'd presume most people outside of Japan haven't. From gangster movies to video games, and even some city pop sounding arrangements, this is a story of Joe Hisaishi and how his music has touched the lives of millions. Joe Hisaishi was born in Nakano on December 6, 1950. His real name is Mamoru Fujisawa, but he uses Joe Hisaishi as a stage name. Hisaishi's father was a high school science teacher, and he wasn't really into music. What his father loved was the cinema. He took Hisaishi to hundreds of films growing up, and these trips made Hisaishi dream of composing film scores. Hisaishi has also mentioned that his family had a power gramophone that used bamboo needles. It fascinated him as a child, and he used it to listen to a wide variety of music genres. At the age of 5, Hisaishi began learning the violin. He was taught using the Suzuki method, and it was clear that Hisaishi had a love for music that wasn't forced upon by his parents. In junior high school, Hisaishi was a part of his school's brass band club, where he played the trumpet, trombone, saxophone, and also conducted. By the time he reached high school, Hisaishi shifted his attention to the piano and began developing his passion for composition. In 1969, Hisaishi attended the Kunitachi University of Music in Tokyo, where he studied music composition under Takao Watanabe. Hisaishi's influences were quite diverse at this time. He loved jazz as well as the electronic band Yellow Magic Orchestra, which featured the late Ryuichi Sakamoto. Terry Riley's album A Rainbow in Curved Air was another big inspiration. He loved the minimalism of Riley's music and then listened to more minimalist composers like Steve Reich, Philip Glass, and Arvo Pärt. After finishing school, Hisaishi collaborated as a typesetter for a number of minimalist artists. It was his first experience in the music industry, and then in 1974, he got his first composing job. He scored the anime First Human Geatris, which follows a family during the Stone Age, and it was received very well. Hisaishi continued to score anime, and he also had his first public performance around this time. The early 80s marked the release of Hisaishi's first 2 albums. For his first album, he worked as a producer alongside the Kwanju Ensemble. The word Kwanju means tamarind in Swahili, and a tamarind is an African tree that many instruments were originally built from. Kwanju is characterized by minimalism and African rhythms. It also explores the theme of Ma, which roughly translates to emptiness in Japanese. The following year saw the release of his second album, Information. This album was much different from Kwanju. It has an 80s pop sound to it and features a variety of catchy melodies. As Hisaishi began to establish himself as a commercial musician, he realized he needed a stage name. He wanted a name that would be easily recognizable to Western audiences and settled on Joe Hisaishi. But why Hisaishi? Well, the name was derived from the Japanese kanji translation of Quincy Jones, who is one of Hisaishi's inspirations. Jones worked with both Frank Sinatra and Michael Jackson, so it was quite a big name to live up to. Hisaishi is best known for his partnership with Studio Ghibli director Hayao Miyazaki. The pair formed one of the most iconic director-composer partnerships in film history, and their story began back in 1983. Before Miyazaki and Isao Takahata founded Studio Ghibli in 1985, the two had worked on a number of films together. When the pair began working on Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, they were looking for a composer to score the film. The publishing company that distributed Hisaishi's second album, Information, had recommended Hisaishi to create an image album for Nausicaa. Image albums are used in Japanese animations to influence the film's music during production, but they don't necessarily make it onto the final soundtrack. Takahata was impressed by Hisaishi's image album for Nausicaa, and he recommended him to Miyazaki to score the film. Nausicaa was received very well, and Hisaishi's soundtrack was a big factor to its success. If you're accustomed to Hisaishi's most popular Ghibli soundtracks, you may be surprised by the heavy use of synths in Nausicaa. Although the score could be seen as outdated, most think it fits the post-apocalyptic world of Nausicaa perfectly. It's also really cool that Hisaishi's daughter Mai sang the Requiem at the end of the film, and she was only 4 years old at the time. A year after Nausicaa's release, Studio Ghibli was founded, and Hisaishi was chosen to score their first official film, Laputa: Castle in the Sky. It follows two children as they search for the lost floating island of Laputa, and Hisaishi's score was a reflection of their grand adventure. My Neighbor Totoro was Hisaishi's next Ghibli project, and its music was very distinct from his previous two projects with Miyazaki. In 1996, Disney became the new distributor of Studio Ghibli movies. However, Disney had issues with how music was being used in Ghibli films. Disney felt that for a non-Japanese audience, there was too much time in these films without any music. Take Laputa as an example. It's just over 2 hours long and its original soundtrack is just under 40 minutes. Western movies usually have music playing for the majority of their runtime, so Disney felt that Ghibli films like Laputa would not be suitable for their market. Disney believed that there shouldn't be any parts without music that lasted more than 3 minutes, and so Hisaishi was hired to rescore the soundtrack. This new version of Laputa ended up having over double the amount of time with music than the original version did. This scenario once again unfolded for Studio Ghibli's 1989 film Kiki's Delivery Service. What I specifically want to talk about with the rescoring of Kiki is how Disney added music to many scenes that purposely had no music. Miyazaki has spoken about these quiet moments in his films before. They're intentional and relate to the Japanese theme of ma, meaning emptiness. As someone who's so accustomed to Western films, these quiet scenes really stood out to me when I first watched Kiki. When Kiki's Delivery Service was released on DVD in 2010, Disney ironically switched back to the film's original score. Studio Ghibli began the new millennium with what's become their most popular film. Spirited Away is the 7th highest grossing animated film ever, and it became the first and only Ghibli film to win an Oscar. Hisaishi's score for Spirited Away was at the core of the film's success, and tracks like One Summer Day and Six Station have become some of Hisaishi's most popular songs. 2004 marked the release of Howl's Moving Castle. Hisaishi's score for this film was very different from many of his previous works because of how theme-based it was. The majority of music in Howl's Moving Castle is based on its main theme, Merry-Go-Round of Life. It's Hisaishi's most streamed song and by far my favorite composition that he's ever done. The song is a metaphor for how life is always worth living, and although its melody is used excessively in Howl's Moving Castle, it never felt too repetitive for me. Although I imagine a number of people would disagree. In 2008, Ponyo was released and its score won the Japanese Academy Award for Best Music. The ironic part was that it won over another Hisaishi film, called Departures, which became the first Japanese film to win the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar. The Image album for Ponyo also features the voice of Hisaishi's daughter Mai, but she never made it on the soundtrack. During the production of his films, Miyazaki often asked Hisaishi to write parts of a score earlier on so he can let the music influence his direction on a project. But for their latest collaboration, Miyazaki wanted to do things differently. Hisaishi didn't know a single thing about the film until it was nearly finished, and this approach still ended up working very well. The Boy and the Heron was a big success upon its release. It became the first foreign film to win the Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature, and the score was nominated for a Golden Globe as well. Its score showed glimpses of Hisaishi's minimalism roots, and it ended up winning a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score. Hisaishi actually had no clue that he was nominated until one of his American friends called him to congratulate him. Now, you may be wondering how Hisaishi and Miyazaki have managed to produce so many successful projects over the past 4 decades. In 2023, Hisaishi spoke about his relationship with Miyazaki, and mentioned how the two of them don't really have much of a personal relationship. They keep their relationship strictly professional, and Hisaishi believes that this has been a big factor in the longevity and success of their partnership. Outside of his work with Miyazaki, Hisaishi has formed another successful partnership with a famous Japanese director. For anyone who's familiar with Japanese cinema, the name Takeshi Kitano would definitely ring a bell. Kitano is notorious for his films surrounding the Yakuza, but he's also made a variety of other films ranging from dramas to comedies. His career started out as a comedian, but when the director of a comedy film that Kitano was starring in dropped out, Kitano joked that he would direct the film, and he actually ended up directing it. Kitano has since become one of the biggest contemporary film directors in Japan, and Hisaishi has played a big role in helping him reach that status. Their partnership began in 1999 with The Scene at the Sea. It follows a deaf garbage man as he finds a broken surfboard and begins learning how to surf. Hisaishi's intimate score for the film marked the first of 7 collaborations between himself and Kitano. 1993's Sonatine was the film that put Kitano on the international stage, and Hisaishi's unsettling but lush score was a big reason for its success. My favorite score that Hisaishi has done for Kitano is their 1999 collaboration Kikujiro. Its opening track Summer has to be my favorite non-Ghibli piece of music that Hisaishi has ever made. Following the release of Dolls in 2002, Hisaishi and Kitano's partnership unfortunately came to an end. Kitano claimed that Hisaishi was becoming too expensive to hire, whereas Hisaishi claimed that he didn't like the screenplay of the film. There was also some arguments between them about certain pieces of music not being used in the film, and where some pieces were being placed. Although they didn't end off on a good note, their collaboration has left a lasting impact on the Japanese film industry. Besides his collaborations with Studio Ghibli and Takeshi Kitano, Hisaishi has done a number of scores and other projects that I wanted to touch upon. In 1985, shortly after the success of Nausicaa, Hisaishi founded his own recording studio called Wonder Station. By the end of the 80s, Hisaishi also founded his own label and released his first solo album. Hisaishi has scored a large number of anime shows and movies throughout his career, and he's also done the soundtrack for the 1998 Winter Paralympics. Hisaishi has worked on a few video game soundtracks as well. In 1993, he scored the PC game Far East of Eden 2, which was the most expensive video game ever made upon its release. He was also the lead composer for the series Ni no Kuni. In 2001, Hisaishi became the first Japanese film composer to direct his own feature with the release of Quartet. It's about 4 musicians that enter a music competition after being apart from each other for many years. I'd be really interested to see Hisaishi's style of directing, but I couldn't find Quartet anywhere online. Director Ayumu Watanabe is a big fan of Hisaishi, and he was really determined to get Hisaishi to score his 2019 film Children of the Sea. Hisaishi did end up scoring the film, so I can only imagine how delighted Watanabe was about it. In 2020, Hisaishi scored a Chinese fantasy movie called Soul Snatcher. Hisaishi is quite popular in Korea because of his Studio Ghibli works, but that popularity can also be attributed to some Korean projects that he's worked on. He's composed music for many Korean films and this big-budget drama series. Hisaishi even received an international award for one of his Korean scores. I've only mentioned a handful of the awards that Hisaishi has won throughout his career, and the last accomplishment I wanted to mention is that Hisaishi is one of the few musicians who have been asked to perform in front of the Japanese emperor. Hisaishi has done plenty of concerts throughout his career, and he usually sells out his venues regardless of where he's performing. I was lucky enough to see Hisaishi recently, and it was my reason for making this video. I wanted to fully appreciate him as an artist before going, and I've always put off listening to his works outside of Studio Ghibli. At the concert, he performed his Symphony No. 3 Metaphysica, Maurice Ravel's La Valse, and A Spirited Away Suite. You could tell by Hisaishi's face that even after doing hundreds of concerts, he still loves to perform. The Spirited Away Suite had such a raw sound that was better than pretty much any recording I've listened to before, and it was such a surreal feeling to see him play the piano melody for One Summer Day and The Sixth Station, while also conducting the orchestra. The best part of the concert though was the encore. Hisaishi came back on stage, and when he began playing the opening notes of Merry-Go-Round of Life, the entire crowd went crazy, to the point where you couldn't even hear him play for a few seconds. I had goosebumps throughout the concert, and it was such a special experience to see him in person when I think about how much his music has impacted me since I first came across it in early 2023. If you're interested in watching one of Hisaishi's live recordings, I'd recommend his 2008 concert in Budokan, which celebrated the 25-year partnership between Hisaishi and Miyazaki. Over the past 5 decades, Joe Hisaishi has become one of the most influential composers in Japanese history. Hisaishi believes that music doesn't need to be complex to be special, and it shouldn't be used to simply fill silence. Kitano and Miyazaki's films are 2 different extremes of filmmaking, but Hisaishi has shown time after time that he can drive a story with just a simple melody. So at the age of 73, what's next for Hisaishi? We can't rule out the possibility of another Miyazaki-Hisaishi collaboration, given how many times Miyazaki has announced his retirement just to come back to make another film. Hisaishi has said in past interviews that he believes he'll never retire from creating music, and with that, we should look forward to more Hisaishi music in the coming years. That concludes my account of Joe Hisaishi's career. I'd highly recommend watching some videos about the theory behind his compositions if you want to learn about a lot of cool stuff that I didn't get to talk about. Because Studio Ghibli has a history of removing videos that use their copyrighted assets, I've only used images that have been made available for personal use in this video. If there's anything important I misinterpreted or didn't mention, tell me and I'll point it out in the pinned comment. Otherwise, let me know what your favorite Hisaishi score is, and thanks for watching.